Ms. Luton, if you would let the record show all board members are present for roll call. And at this point, turn it over to Stephen for the pledge and excellence.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we'd like to introduce you to Lucy Gowers. Lucy, would you come forward, please? So Lucy will lead our Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Let me tell you a little bit about Lucy. There's lots to brag about. Lucy is representing Phelps Center for Gifted Education, which she has been a part of for the past 4 years. Lucy started in the Wings program in 3rd grade and is now a 6th grader in the Scholars program. Scholars is just one of several programs that SPS offers to meet the needs of our gifted students in grades kindergarten through 8th. Earlier this month, Phelps celebrated Gifted Education Week, which highlighted all of those programs. Lucy is active in Film Club, Scholars Yearbook, and enjoys singing and acting with Springfield Little Theater. Recently, she placed 2nd with her individual documentary on the Korean War at the National History Day competition, and that earned her a trip to the state NHD competition next month. Mrs. Patterson can get your photo. The very next morning, Lucy earned a 1 rating for solo vocal performance at the middle school vocal competition, so it was a very big weekend for Lucy. Congratulations. Lucy is accompanied tonight by her parents, Billy and Callie Gowers, just Mom, Callie Gowers, and Dr. Lizelle. At this time, we ask them to please stand so that we may acknowledge their support of Lucy. Okay, so if everyone would please rise, Lucy will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Awesome.
This is your job that she needs. Thank you, Lucy.
She's doing it. Oh, gotcha.
Congratulations. Good job, Lucy.
So moving on, we will now move into our honoring excellence, and I believe this young man may not be with us tonight, but I will go ahead and mention him because he's very deserving. Our first recognition is a Hillcrest High School student who was named the 2018 Youth of the Year by Boys and Girls Clubs of Springfield. Jaden Cinder is a senior at Hillcrest. He received this honor because of the example that he sets as a responsible and caring citizen in the community. He was selected from a field of 11 candidates, and as a recipient of the Youth of the Year award, Jaden received a $16,000 scholarship. So we congratulate Jaden. Next, we want to salute the Glendale High School girls swim team, and they are here. So the team and coach, if you would please come forward and begin to line up here so the board can see you. I'm going to brag about you a little bit here. For the 3rd time in 5 years, the Glendale High School girls swim team. Face the board, there we go, and the trophy here.
I feel like you're getting ready to do a cheer.
You can go fill in over here.
Can you guys make yourselves more photographic?
Yes, yes. Group together here.
I'm taking a picture of all of this.
Totally lost.
Awesome.
Oh, now you guys, this is looking good.
Awesome. So, for the 3rd time in 5 years, the Glendale High School girls swim team has been named the best in Missouri. In February, the team brought home the 2018 Misha Class 1 Girls State Championship by earning a total of 195 points. In addition to the team title, Glendale won all state titles in 5 individual events and 3 relay events, and all state honorable mention in 4 individual events. Another highlight was a state record set by the 400-yard freestyle relay team with a time of 3 minutes and 38 seconds. Tonight, we're pleased to honor the 15 members of the GHS swim team and their coach, Mr. Steve Boyce. At this time, we'll ask each of them to introduce themselves, and you can tell us the events that you competed.
My name is Morgan Schaefer, and I competed in the 500 and 200 free.
My name is Hallie Youngman, and I swam the 100 breaststroke.
Hi, I'm Maddie Duncan. I swim the 200 medley relay, the 200 IM, the 100 bag, and the 400 free relay.
I'm Audrey Mace. I swim the 200 medley relay, the 100 fly, the 500, and the 200 freestyle relay.
I'm Jesse Hicks. I swam the 200 free, 100 back, and the 400 freestyle relay.
I'm Kate Anderson, and I swim the 500 free.
I'm Kate Sherrod, and I swim the 100 fly.
I'm Sam Rathjen. I swam 50 free, 100 free, 200 free relay, and the 400 free relay.
I'm Alexis Moritz. I swim the 200 individual medley.
I'm Izzy Dunn, and I swim the 200 IM.
I'm Caitlin Palmer, and I swim the 200 freestyle and the 100 backstroke.
Excellent.
Congratulations again to Glendale. And now we would like to celebrate one of our employees as part of our Power of One. This initiative allows us to spotlight SPS employees who go above and beyond to make an impact on the lives of children. Here is our March Power of One story.
I had just had a discussion with some 6th graders yesterday who wanted zombie books, and they were very surprised I had some on my shelves. They asked me if I had read it, and I said, I did read it, but I didn't like it. But that doesn't mean it's not the right book for you. If a kid says that they don't like to read, it's just because they haven't found the right book. I'm Christina Wilkins, and I'm the Library Media Specialist at Pipkin Middle School. I'm originally from Western New York. I grew up in a small town near Niagara Falls, New York. I love to cook with my children. We have so much fun cooking together at my house. We also enjoy sports, so we're outside all of the time or on the basketball court, just kind of having a fun time together. I became an educator because some of the wonderful teachers I've had in my life. Later became a librarian because of my love of books and my love of reading. It just sort of was a perfect fit where the world of libraries was going, and the fact that I loved reading and talking to kids about books so much.
She's just the jack of all trades. I don't know how to condense. I mean, she literally does everything. Like, she's here for teachers. She does it all. There's nothing that she doesn't try to accomplish for our kids, and she's just always so kid-centered, and I really wanted to honor that because that is truly our focus here at Pipkin.
My first interactions here in our library was with a boy who came in with a bunch of other boys, and they were just interested in kind of goofing around and not really finding books and reading. I asked him if he wanted a book, and he said there were not books in this library for kids like him. And I said, you know, I think I can find a book for you. We took some time, we found a book off the shelf. I said, just give it a try. Come back later, tell me what you think. He read the whole book in 2 days. I'm happy to say that we saw him graduate 2 years ago from Central. You really hope that you've made an impact in their life at a young age, and maybe that helped them get through high school and will continue on being a reader later on in their life.
It is my pleasure to introduce you to Christina Wilkins, Library Media Specialist from Pipkin Middle School. Christina, would you come forward? So Ms. Wilkins is just one example of the many Power of One stories that continue to be shared, and we encourage the public to follow Power of One SPS on social media for a variety of those stories. And now at this time, I'd like to welcome Mrs. Marty Moore to the podium for our partner recognition.
Make sure the video's gone. Yes.
Here we go.
Ozarks Food Harvest serves 270 hunger relief organizations across 28 Ozarks counties, reaching nearly 30,000 individuals each week. For over 35 years, they've been living their mission of transforming hunger into hope. For the last 7 years, they've been cultivating philanthropy in our district by engaging our students in an annual food fight, a food and fun drive competition among our schools and our partners to raise hunger awareness across the district and stock community and school pantry shelves. Last year, one of our middle school winners asked us, "Aren't people hungry all year long?" And that became a catalyst for us to think about holding the drive after the holidays. A lot of times when organizations have a good plan that's working, the thinking is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I'm happy to report that Ozark Food Harvest worked really well with us to figure out what would make this drive this year work well for our students and our partners. And during January of this year, food for more than 39,000 meals was collected by students across Springfield Public Schools. Nurses at the sites led the charge, engaged the students, engaged student councils, and participation among SPS schools more than doubled to include 42 schools assisted by 33 community partner organizations, resulting in 17,743 pounds of food and over $6,000 to stock community and school pantries. No small feat. Trophies are presented to the winning middle and high school students that collect the most cash and pounds of food per student. They're big, giant forks that are a prized trophy at the schools. And this year, the winners were Cherokee Middle School, which will receive their fork on Friday, and Parkview High School. Eric was unable to be here tonight, as was Dr. Powers, and they both wanted to convey their appreciation for the nursing staff that kind of went above and beyond and led that charge at their school. Elementary schools compete among the school classrooms, and 5 classrooms in each feeder pattern that collect the most food and/or cash get a field trip to the Ozark Food Bank. It's an incredible day for our students to see up close and personal the changing dynamics that Ozark Food Harvest is responsible for. Tonight we have one of those schools represented. I'm going to read all the schools and then we'll present the school that's here with that award. From the Central Feeder Pattern, Boyd Elementary was an elementary winner. From the Kickapoo Feeder Pattern, Bright Stars Early Childhood Center was a winner. From the Parkview Feeder System, McGregor Elementary is recognized. From the Glendale Feeder Pattern, Pershing Elementary is recognized. And tonight we have with us, from the Hillcrest Feeder Pattern, Dr. Hoffman from Robertson Elementary. If you'd come forward. We appreciate it. Do you want to say anything? Okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay. It's just exciting to see the variety of schools that are involved and engaged and how everybody feels a part. And one of the things that Ozark Food Harvest does to make that work is that it's by the percentage of the students that you have at your school. So it's a level playing field for all of our schools, and I'm proud to say that we have representation from all 5 feeder systems. But I'd really like to call up forward tonight 2 of the people at Ozark Food Harvest who were so willing to work with us to kind of make this game-changing result for us this year. And so please welcome to the podium from Ozark Food Harvest, Jennifer Sickinger and Thomas Cunningham, who led this year's campaign. It's incredible the work that they do, the tireless way that they try to make this easy for our staff, for our district, and the way that they engage students across our community. So we're just delighted to partner with you. I'm going to shake your hand one more time.
Thank you so much.
And get a photo op here.
All right.
Anything you'd like to add?
I just want to say that since we began this food and fun drive 7 years ago, we've raised more than 144,000 meals, and the lessons of empathy that we've been able to share with the students are really priceless. So we just appreciate your partnership, and we can't wait for next year.
Excited.
Thank you.
Do you have more, or you're just showing it up? Okay.
The fun stuff is over.
You all can stay if you want, or you can leave. That's up to you guys.
You got a sock door to sort.
You got a sock door to sort. It was good. So accurate. Okay. Moving on, item 2, public comments for agenda items. We have any? You know, that would be a good thing to do, wouldn't it? Getting in a hurry here. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Lena. Your second? Second by Charles. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Now back to my original out of order comment. Public comments on agenda items? None? Okay. Next order of business is consent agenda. That would be items 3.01, approval of minutes, 4.01, contracts, agreements, change orders, and item 5, consent agenda personnel items. And I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 3, 4, and 5.
So moved.
Motion by Tim. Second by Denise. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 6.01, Treasurer's Report. Carol?
Good evening. We have provided you with our reports for the month, and also I will highlight for you a budget amendment that's presented. It's a very small one relative to our operating budget, but it is for $65,000, and it is relative to aligning revenue to that which we have received for M&M tax. M&M tax and interest. So aligns it to actual. It's so small that it does not affect our projected ending fund balance percentage, and we continue to remain stable at 17.02% for the estimate at June 30. The other reports provided for your benefit include the general budget summary that lists all of our funds, the revenue and expenditures for each, the detail of the budget amendment, and then the variety of reports that we provide each month that show additional detail on transactions, and the interest report, as well as the bond funds report that continues to remain steady at just over $2.3 million. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Question for Carol. And approval of the treasurer's report will take care of the transfer that you're talking about, the budget. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Motion by Charles, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Jill.
Can't get my votes in time.
Do it quick. Thank you. Treasurer's report is approved. Item 7, informational items. Our student success report. Mike?
Yes, thank you so much. Pull it up here real quick. Tonight, as promised, we will be bringing our second of 3 reports to you. We are committed to bringing you a beginning of the year achievement data, the middle of the year, and our end of the year. So tonight is our middle of the year data. Amy St. John will come up to you and kind of show you some high-level data. But I think the story behind that is how we use the data to close the achievement gap. So I've asked Dr. Anderson and Dr. Dublin and Mrs. Gross to come up here and talk a little bit about what they're doing with our teachers, and Dr. Philly, to talk about what we're doing with our teachers, our leaders, and then Kathy Gross will come up and talk about what we're doing in the system with this data. And then Amy will then close out with some of the building level data and tell you some of the stories behind some of the metrics that you're going to see tonight. So my pleasure to introduce Amy St. John.
And anyone else who'd like to talk about what's going on. Hi, thanks for having me here tonight.
At your table, I also have a bit of a cheat sheet for you, so we'll be referencing this in our conversation tonight, so if you'll have that ready. No quiz on it, but it will be a bit of a conversation starter as we get into this. So I also have the AAA team here with me tonight, so just to reference the back row, so if you could wave, and as we talk about them, it's good to put a face with a name. You guys often talk about them, but one of the things that we're going to talk about in the first few slides is that our new public-facing, our website, you know, the district website has changed, and so what you'll see here is a snapshot of the work of what some of the principals you may have heard talk about is Power BI is a new analytics tool that we have moved to in the district, and that's at the fingertips of all of our principals now and our district leadership, and we're building the capacity of our district leaders, but a snapshot of it is also on the public facing side, and it's a more fluid tool for us to be able to use. It's an industry product that's made by Microsoft. And so the piece that you see down in the bottom left-hand corner there, if you wanted to access data for the school district, you have that at your fingertips now. And it's taking us to the next level, so it's not shelved data. As you may have been expecting to see before with the annual reports, it's actually live data as it's coming across for the public side of the stuff, with the enrollment figures and assessment and things of that. There are internal pieces that I have drawn out there for internal use only with the SPS analytics, and that would be login type information, so you can't get to all of it. But as you might have expected before with the data and statistics, if you wanted the 10-year enrollment or free and reduced lunch, it's still accessible. Lauren just placed it out there today, so if anybody would need that, you have that at your fingertips. If you needed something further, you can simply click on the data request form, and we would be able to provide that to you. So it's all right there for you. So just want to make sure you were aware of that. In addition to that, we also have the data dashboard, and this is what we've been working through our senior leadership team, just making sure that this is something that you're aware of too, and why we have the data dashboard. I feel like I'm going to need some water. Getting a little.
Well, we can.
Sorry about that. The as we. I'm running out of. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. Thank you. With the clearly I've talked too much today.
We're not going to respond to that.
The benefits of the dashboard. Thank you so much.
Well, we do see the back row.
Yep. They're nodding. I have talked too much. The benefits of the dashboard. So with it being interactive and at our fingertips, we're able to drill down to that and actually get to student level data, which has been very exciting for our building leadership, and I'll talk a lot about that throughout the slides here today, because that really gets us to data-driven decisions and it being at our fingertips. And that's really important as we talk about mid-year data, because it's really that halftime report, and that's what we really have utilized in our data protocols. And it's been very exciting for us to really look at that standards-based approach with our buildings and help them understand where they really need to dig in and work further and understand as we have worked in partnership with the Learning Support Department and with our building leadership, so that they understand where they need to make adjustments and support students and really intervene where they need to. So that interaction has been good. As we talk about that mid-year, we're going to have a couple different things to look at. We're going to talk about trend by grade level, and then we're also going to look at similar school type of information. Several years ago, when I first started visiting with you, we had transitioned from talking about at or above grade level to moving into scale score. And so when we started talking about scale score, I explained to you is that was really when we think about if we lined all the students up and how tall they were, and that's really where it starts to make sense, because as a kindergartner has much more room to grow than an 8th grader, that's really how we think about with growth and learning. So a kindergartner, they expect that they will grow more in a year, but by the time they get to 8th grade, really their growth is much more narrow in that learning approach. And that's really how a scale score works for both reading and math. And so when we look at that, and we have a scale score growth, that's what this starts to look at. So the scale on the left side, with being at 600, these are national numbers with iReady, our diagnostic assessment tool. The scale really goes to 800, but what we have here is our data set over the 3 years. We kind of have right now somewhere in that neighborhood of about 600, just a little over 600. So what I wanted you to kind of focus your eyes on for the next several sets of slides is starting in the upper left-hand corner, first of all, is underlined is that we are going to look at reading. This is all of our students. We are looking at a comparison, and this is for us as the leaders of the district to ensure that our teaching and learning protocols are in check. So what we're looking for is, are we trending in the right, toward the right? So then, in other words, are we looking to make sure that what we're working on is working correctly? So we're looking for an upward side trend. And then we're also looking, are we producing results that are in the range or close to the range for which the results are supposed to be expected? So I'm gonna focus your eyes on kindergarten, and then we're gonna look at our protocol sheet. So our protocol sheet, I'll focus your eyes on the top box for reading in kindergarten, and I'll have you look for the number 362. So 362 on the top for on grade level, the range 362 to 479. Okay, so that puts us on grade level for kindergarten, and our number is coming in at 374. Okay, so that puts us in the range. Now that range would be for the end of the year, but these are our middle of the year numbers, okay? So that would mean that our kindergartners are already in that range in the middle of the year for where we would be coming at the end of the year. Yes?
I don't see on that slide 362.
It's on the paper.
It's, okay, it's not on the slide. It's not
Right, our slide is at 374.
And I thought you said that this is the state of Missouri.
These are our scores. I was mentioning that the tool is a national tool, and that's what sets the ranges for us.
Okay, so we are looking at our district.
Our district.
All students reading current reality.
Correct.
Okay,
And
you want us to focus on grade level 362 to 479.
I was just training your eye on what we use it for. So what, in other words, what we do as a district is we go, okay, so are we trending in the right direction? Yes, we are. Are we kind of coming in range with what we should be coming in range with? We know as a district that our kids come in with deficits, so we want to make sure how far off are we on those deficits. So for instance, as we ratchet up, we know that we are starting to not quite hit the range, but we know that we have deficits in the student learning. That's a known factor of our students, because that's what we work on, is closing that gap. And so we start to shift and look at the data in different ways, such as the other slides that we have to look at, okay? And then we start to look at how far from the range are we. And again, this is a mid-year check, so we're not expecting to hit it at the full range at this point, because the standard view, meaning we're looking at where we are for this time of the year, but we're looking at where the end goal is. Okay? So far, so good? And this is the check that we've done before, so I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page with that.
So at this moment, at the kindergarten level, we are on grade level for end of year projection.
We're doing okay.
At no other grade level, middle of year, are we at grade level for end of year?
That is a correct statement. That is a correct statement. But we are just on the edge of it.
Are we able to talk about where we were last year for kindergarten so that we can contemplate? Is that what that other number is?
The red line
Okay,
is
so-
last year.
All right, I'm sorry, that's a dumb question.
No.
Now I'm with you. It does all of that, okay. So that's where we need to be clapping.
Yeah. We are just a smidge better than where we were last year. It was a technical term, smidge.
I follow your technical terms quite well. Thank you for using them.
Right. So that's the pattern that we're gonna now go through a 4-slide series. So we're gonna look at reading, and then now that same data set just gets filtered, but then we look at it by subgroup. And with that subgroup filter, the fact that our district is at a greater than 50% free and reduced, that we have a large subgroup population, it doesn't change the data set much because we have a large subgroup population. So you don't see much change. It goes down slightly. But what we start to then look at in a couple more slides is that we look at then, well, which of the subgroups? So then in the next slide, and it gets a little tiny, it's really more for purposes of us to teach you how we then go and slice and dice the data down further. Which of then each of the subgroups do we look at further? And then you start to compare each of them individually to see which are performing higher or lower than the others. And then within each of the subgroups, where are we needing to work further and at what grade levels? And this is a high-level version of the story, and then each of the buildings then look at that further. And again, within that Power BI, each building has this ability to drill down and even get to by classroom and by student, so that they have that ability, and that's what we're teaching them to do with the data protocol set. So it's very powerful for them to be able to do that and then work with the students within each classroom, and each teacher has that capability, even within the work that they're doing. When you look at it from this perspective, and this is something that we know to be within our the knowledge that we've already had, but within the way we're looking at it, free broken out compared to our reduced pay students compared to our full pay students, purely our full pay students are meeting the measure, which a research would tell us that that is the case. So then we know that we need to put further resource into free and reduced pay students needing more support. And we know that that is one of the areas that we need to close the gap in. And this data set is telling us that same piece. Okay? Math looks much the same. It follows the same trend pattern. We're seeing that same set of data where kindergarten is the same area for which we're meeting that same range. And it follows the same pattern for the students. The full pay students are meeting the measure, where the free and the reduced pay students are not.
Are there any outliers, or it's all falling into what we would expect?
We're all falling into what we expect.
I only heard what you said.
Which is a good thing and a bad thing. That means our protocols are working. That means that the pieces that we've put into place, so this is the third year of consistent practice of using iReady, which is good. That means when you're in the third year of a set of data, we're very excited about end of year results. Middle of year results are always difficult, you know, because you're, you want 3 years of solid, you know, of 3 years of data. Seeing numbers like this are very exciting in terms of they're trending in the right direction. The powerful part will be once that you get the dividends from the process and protocols that you put in place, which I'm excited about the next slides I'm getting ready to show you, because we're starting to see once we dig into the standards mastery of the work, we're starting to see the turn, and we're starting to see the growth happen.
Can you back up and say that?
Let me go further, actually, because I want to show you where the work is starting to happen right here. So the work that Jill and Dave have been able to do, so since January, after the mid-year results, after the halftime results, they go out into the buildings, they split the buildings, the title, non-title, from our building. They spent more than 90 hours working in the buildings with the teachers and the principals. They go through a 5-step process, identifying each of them going through that process, reviewing the results. They analyze the needs of the building. They identify the gaps of the standards. They break that down with each of the buildings, each of the grade levels, and they identify what needs to happen. They then say, okay, now what needs to go on from here until the end of the school year? Do you need to spend more time in geometry? Do you need to spend more time in geometry in 3rd grade? What tools do you need to happen? Pair that up with Allison and Matt and Catherine and the learning support team. Matt and Catherine in the learning support department then have that all in Google and Canvas, and they have it all linked up, put those right in the hands of the teachers, using the map tools even, having it all connected even within the tools that are in the hands of the students, having them practice all the way through that. It's just been phenomenal, because now we are actually right in the midst of what the students are doing every single day and working back through that, and then putting them back through the pre-test, the post-test, and we're seeing the results happen back in the classroom. And working back through that, what we're seeing is you now have a mid-year analysis by domain of the students, and you're seeing the beginning of your results, the middle of your results, and you're seeing the growth happen by those domains. And that's phenomenal. So you may not see it on the overarching number because the deficits were so low, we have so far to go, but you can see it when you have a parallel example of the pre and the post. That's where the work is really happening.
So what we're looking at here is an example. This is a district-wide.
This is a third grade drill down into by domain. You can see.
For all SBS third graders.
No.
This is us digging in and giving you an example of what it really looks like.
I think what Charles is asking is, so on the left side, that is grade 3, number of students assessed, 1,877.
Correct.
It's the beginning of year.
Right.
And the-
But
Correct.
on the right-hand side,
And this is
just,
a subset.
but it's not the same grouping of people. If you've got 1,877 and then only 194 on the right-hand side. That's what I think
Yeah, that's my question. Because this is the full population.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do see. I did. It looks like I did grab a screenshot of the right side. That's a bad screenshot, and I can update that.
you see what
I do see what I do. I see.
Well, it doesn't depict what we're trying to talk about because you're comparing apples and oranges.
Regardless, I can replicate what I'm saying and tell that same story. That was just a bad screenshot. But because what I'm trying to say there is that we are producing this over and over and again in the buildings that are telling that story.
So I think.
I apologize.
What this is showing us is that for a classroom teacher, they can look at beginning of the year, these specific standards involving high frequency words, vocabulary, where their students were beginning of the year.
Yes.
And they can look at where they are in middle of the year, see where they're improving or not. That will inform instruction for that very next day.
Yes, by
Or
student.
weeks ahead. And then hopefully then by end of the year, see this tremendous growth. And that's what we're looking for, growth.
Right, which is so exciting.
If this, and I know it's not, but if on the far right, if this was the same population as the one on the left, this would suggest that at the beginning of the year, at 493 for a third grader, they would be below grade level, one grade level below.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, they haven't really, at the beginning of the year. Yeah. This one, on the other hand, at 513, middle of the year, if that was the full population, they would be on grade level.
Right.
Even though we know it's not, but yeah.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
right,
yes,
you're right.
yes.
Right. I'll update it for you. Yeah.
The 194 third graders represented here are in fact at grade level, at least the
Yes.
average.
Yeah. I apologize. I'll update that for you. But that's what I'm saying. We're the 90 hours that have been spent in the building and the work that we're doing in tandem with the learning support. It's just phenomenal what we're seeing. The unfortunate part is that when you roll it up and you have a deficit when you begin is that you can't see it at that high level. So that's why you have to dig deeper and you have to see what's happening in the classrooms and the tremendous amount of work that's going on. And it's truly exciting. And it's just very exciting, so.
And
Lots
so
of stories
you're
to tell.
talking about, so just this type of analysis, you're saying occurs at the district level, at the school level, so a principal could look at their school at a grade level, and even down to an individual level, which we're talking about, just to make sure everybody understands. You
That
can
five-step
drill down
process.
and look at all this and compare an apple to an apple to an apple, pre, middle, end, or whatever. Okay.
In some ways, the results are important, but what's really exciting about this is that they are a means, the data are a means to an end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
From a teaching perspective, you're not waiting for the MAP score to come back at a much later date. You're making real-time adjustments as if you're playing football, which you can't
Good
wait
job.
for next season. But anyway, so to me, as a board member, as a teacher, as a parent, as a principal, this is more useful data.
Much more useful.
Than all those bar charts. Those bar charts are not in context without this stuff attached to it, so I'm just letting you know, like in the future, like, that's just kind of overwhelming without this narrative laid on top of it. But this kind of stuff, if we're able to click around and look at it with a login, like if we have permission to log in and look at it from this perspective, is much more meaningful, reflective data.
We talked about all kinds of different ways to tell the story, and I jokingly said you should really shadow Dave, because that would be one idea that he was very excited about, so.
Right, Dave?
We love field trips.
Can I say one other thing though,
Yes.
as I'm thinking of how teachers are using this compared to really not having had it, name your time ago, it also is producing more work for them. It occurs to me that though this is very, very useful, my goodness, how much more time are they spending it's adding to the workload in a positive way, but I think we have to acknowledge that that's one more thing for them to do.
Yes, and the hard part from the district's perspective is to not only focus on deficits, but to also continue to do what you're already succeeding.
And not always looking at numbers, but
Correct.
people. But I still think that it's there, with everything that's good, you have got, and my teacher friends are nodding at me, so I can't be totally out of whack here. It's just important to notice that that's a shift in the way you do business, but, you know, I don't know, it just seems like it's at some point the 24-hour day does run out.
It does. We're going to be shifting back and forth there, so I'm going to turn it to Dr. Kelly.
I'm just going to go over a few of the learning opportunities that we're providing to address some of the data that you've just looked at. As you all know, and we've kind of talked about here tonight, the data that you were seeing on those bar graphs represents 2,000 students in a grade level. And teachers really have to address the needs of all of their students at an individual level. So the learning opportunities that we have designed for our teachers in conjunction with other departments are really aimed at getting to know your students, finding out where they are, whether they are below or are above, and helping them move forward on that continuum. So I'm not going to go through all of these individually, but these are some of the topics that we focus on with literacy training and with math training. You'll see phonics is kind of listed at the top. That's something that we're really diving into this year and will be in full swing next year. We don't necessarily have a very coherent phonics approach right now in the district, and that's needed for our early readers so that they build those foundational skills and are able to be a comprehensive reader whenever, or a fluent reader whenever they get up in the upper grades. The coherence map is something that we've been looking at for the last couple of years with our teachers, but really getting into it more this year. And that's really looking at if this standard is something that they're struggling with, then what is the standard that comes before that they maybe didn't get? And teachers are really now expected, even a second grade teacher, they really need to know first grade standards and kindergarten standards and how to help a student that needs some additional support in those gap areas. And additionally, a second grade teacher needs to know about third grade, fourth grade, and students that are excelling at, in their grade level, how do they keep pushing those students forward? So really teachers, even though they're teaching maybe one grade level, they really need to know that vertical alignment and how they can help the students on the continuum. iReady is great for assessing our students 3 times a year. We're really working with our teachers on assessing them in between those big assessments. So how are we assessing those standards and getting that data back and using that to form our instruction to support all of our student needs. And then that small group is really, it's been a priority for a couple of years, but continues to be for us. So the workshop models that you see listed on here, it's been kind of primarily at the K-5 level, and we're really trying to stretch our ELA teachers at the 6-12 level and the math teachers at the 6-12 level, getting those students into small groups and giving them tasks that are on their level, grouping students by gap areas or strengths, and helping them progress through the standards. These are just some of the different ways that we are getting at those literacy, math, and other content area trainings. We have Summer Academy coming up again this summer. This will be our 3rd year doing it, and as well as Activate SPS, which is kind of taking the place of SPS Now and the Ignite Kickoff. We're kind of combining those into one event this year. So again, I won't read them all, but a lot of the things that I just talked about will be offered for all teachers, and we kind of have a must-do, may-do thing. So here are the things that you are required to learn about for your job. And then here is some of the things that you can supplement your learning and kind of personalize their professional learning as well. We have our curriculum development councils, and there we really focus on diving into this data, looking at it at a standards level. Where are we weak, where are we strong, and making sure that our resources align with the support needed to address those standards. And again, that coherence mapping that I was talking about. As well as Master Learner Institute, this is something that principals can recommend their teachers for, and it's a 4-year program. So starting in year 1, it's either a literacy focus or a math focus, and they can be in both of those tracks. And then building on that into project-based learning and really focusing on that student engagement so that the students are excited about what they're learning. So that is what we are doing, yes.
Let me just ask a question because I wasn't here 3 years ago.
Okay.
So, some of these learning opportunities were here maybe 5 years ago,
sure,
or 10 years ago, whatever. So, what in the last 2 to 3 years are maybe a direct correlation to the previous slides, which are now that we have mid-year data or beginning of the year data, which is, as opposed to just end of the year data that has always been there. But what type of adaptive learning opportunities are like a direct result of this type of new assessment data that our teachers are now receiving that help teachers right in the middle of the year make adaptive adjustments?
So
I'm sorry, I'm kind of like talking in a circle.
No, that's okay. I would say a lot of these learning opportunities are fairly new. And a lot of times, some of the training or a lot of the training was focused primarily on a resource, the software program that they're going to use or the textbook that they're going to use. And really, a lot of it is shifted to focusing on the standards. I mean, that's what we are assessed over. That's what the students are expected to know. So less of a focus on the resource, more of a focus on the standards. I'm not saying that that hasn't been done before, but that's what we're really trying to be intentional about right now. That coherence mapping, in second grade, we probably focused a lot on second grade, but making sure that we're providing resources above and below. A lot of times that maybe happened in an enrichment lesson or an intervention lesson, but maybe teachers didn't really understand the standards that kind of fed into their grade level standards. So really focusing on that. Workshop or small group, that's been something that we focus on for a long time, especially at the elementary level, but we've really hit it hard. We've worked with Jay and his team and working with leaders, making sure that they know when they walk into a classroom, they know what they're looking for, what it should look like, what it shouldn't look like, and we provide them with professional learning opportunities at their job-alike meetings so that they can take it back to their schools and be instructional leaders. And we've really partnered well in that way. So some of this isn't new, but just the intentionality has really come on strong the last couple of years. Yes?
Allison, I think it's the next slide, is right, yeah, the curriculum development councils.
Yes.
So that sort of takes it up. It's not at the individual student or classroom level, it's broader. Does that extend to curriculum planning for Club Encore and for Explore? Because Club Encore can be targeted at particular students who are invited because they haven't met particular standards. So is the kind of data that you now have access to informing the decisions at those levels?
Yes. So the curriculum development councils don't necessarily create the curriculum for Club Encore or Explore. We have separate teams that work on that just because we don't have enough time in our CDCs to focus on both, so we have a separate group that maybe focuses on that. But we are looking at the same data, and it's a lot of the same data like what Amy was showing you with those reports. That's what we're using to see our gap areas and identify where we need to focus for Encore and Explore. Other questions?
Other questions for Allison? Great.
Good evening. I want to share a little bit about the elementary learning update, and we have lots of focuses that we can do, and so how do we focus on what's the most important? And that's what I'm going to speak about specifically with our elementary learning and the leadership tonight. One of the requirements that I ask of the elementary principals is that they love students, they're student focused, that they are a learner first, that they have a teacher's heart, and that they are committed to developing their capacity as a leader. And so when we take those into consideration and realize that we can go lots of different directions with learning and so forth, what's our focus? Because there's lots out there that we can focus on. And so you'll see there at the this area right here, this is the elementary learning model, if you will. It has a beautiful name in the elementary world. It's called the fidget spinner. That was named by the principals and teachers themselves. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the elementary fidget spinner there. Center to that is the classroom management and learning culture, and that really doesn't encapsulate what that is about. If it were a word that captured that, it would be relationships. All learning is double-coded, it's relational. And so we know that there's not a whole lot of cognitive learning going on unless there's meaningful relationships with both the teacher and the content. And we need to cross that bridge, and that's what the teachers are charged for. And so these 4 areas that I'm talking about, we believe that if a classroom teacher masters these areas, that is really going to help that student connect to their purpose and connect to their learning. And so that middle ground is relationships, and it all starts and is focused on relationships. All things come out of good relationships. So the top one would be probably our second focus, and that's the workshop model. The workshop model is how we deliver instruction in reading, writing, and mathematics. Those specific content core areas. And what we are able to do in the workshop model is help the kids at the level that they're at the level they come to us. They all might be at second grade, but they might not be reading all at second grade level. So where's our pre-second grade levels? Where's our second grade levels? Where's our 4th and 5th grade levels in that area? We need to meet the students where they're at. And that's what the workshop model allows for, the teacher to hone in on where the student is and meet their needs. We focus on all 3 of those, but each year we take a particular interest in going deeper with one of them. And this year it happens to be mathematics. And Allison referred to just a moment ago the partnership that we have with her crew, and they come and help with our leaders go deeper, have a deeper understanding. And the pictures that you see there, those are all the elementary principals coming together, and you can see it's not sit and get, it's get up, get learning, be the active learner, and how they can increase their capacity to go back and serve their students and their teachers and staff back at their sites concerning this. The next area is Ignite. Obviously, we are on our 3rd year of the Ignite, and that's how do we use current modern learning tools. We know that they're out there. They're always going to be coming at us, and so how can we effectively harness that and always use that future-minded for the students, because these are the tools that they're going to be using in their future. How do we use them as modern learning tools? And finally, integrated units. Things like social studies, sciences, health sometimes get left off the table if we are spending a lot of time with reading, writing, and math and making sure that those focus. And we can't afford to leave those areas off the table. The curriculum department has done a fantastic job of pulling those together, looking at the learning standards established, pulling together interesting, fun, PBL-type units for the teachers to engage students, and hit all of those areas at the grade level content. So that's the fidget spinner in a nutshell. There's lots of things we can go after, but that's the focus, and as a elementary division, that's where we are putting our eggs in those baskets for that. The second thing I'll draw your attention to is the tower, and that's just our evaluation tool. But an evaluation tool by itself means nothing, again, without relationships, so it starts with that. And what are those meaningful conversations, and then how do we take those conversations and document both principal growth and teacher growth as they increase their capacity to serve our students. So it's not necessarily about the evaluation, it's about the feedback and the consequential, natural conversations that come around learning and building their capacity to serve all learners, whether that's student learners or adult learners in our system. So at this time, I'd answer any questions that you might have concerning the elementary learning.
Question for Jay? Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you, Jay. So obviously I'm going to talk about the secondary world, and my focus is similar to Jay to talk a little bit about how we are working with our secondary leaders, focused on instruction, focused on learning, focused on data. When I say we, I talk about Dr. Wynn and I. We are a team, we're partners in crime, and really work together with our leaders. And you'll see we work with our building leaders, our assistant principals, our CSIs in different capacities. So I'm just going to kind of briefly share some of the strategies that we're using to focus on learning and data. So first of all, you guys are probably aware we meet monthly as a leadership team. First of all, with Dr. Jungman, Cabinet, and SLT, and then we break out in groups. I meet with the high school leaders, Dr. Wynn and I do, and then separately we meet with the middle school leaders. So in those monthly collaborations, we're doing a book study about culture. One big focus this year is feedback. You've probably heard of Dr. Michael Rutherford. He's been in our district doing some training, and we're really focusing this year on some of his feedback tools. Looking at Tower, as Dr. Anderson mentioned, and looking at sample feedback. What is good Tower feedback for teachers to focus on learning? 30-second feedback has been kind of a big one for us. How do you go into a classroom and give a quick, succinct feedback to a teacher to share the great things you're seeing and highlight those best practices? We've done some internal and external site visits. So those pictures you're seeing there, the biggest one there is from Wilson's Creek, our last middle school team meeting. We met there, did our meeting, and then walked around and got into some classrooms and had some fun. They were doing some stop motion, and those kids were more than excited to get in a picture and put it on Twitter. In the top right-hand corner, you see Dr. Harrell and Mr. Kroll doing some volleyball with some kids. That was a PE class, and they were working on doing some of their presidential medal testing. Sit and stretch, I think is what they were doing. So these kids were occupied doing volleyball while the others were sitting and stretching. Then on the bottom right-hand corner, we did visit Reed Spring. Our middle school principals requested to see a school outside of our district, and Reed Spring has recently built a new school, so it's kind of fun to go, see what they were doing, get into the classrooms, and they are doing some neat things with standards mastery. So that kind of connected to some conversations we're having. Another thing we're doing is working closely with Amy St. John and her team on Power BI training. So our leaders are really excited about digging into the data. They're looking at those dashboards through Power BI, and Amy and her team have really helped us guide them along on how to do that. There's so much available there. It's a wealth of knowledge, wealth of data for them, and so we're trying to hone in how to use that. Yes?
It occurs to me that maybe I should have asked someone else this, but along the lines of what I was saying before, because though it is great, it is different and time-consuming. Have we, along the way, asked the teachers if it's helpful and effective? Are they being asked
about
how they're appreciating this tool and how it's assisting them?
Tower or Power BI?
Power BI.
The data tool. Well, how would you use it?
Power BI is not a teacher tool, particularly.
I mean the one that they're at, whatever the name is of the one.
iReady is a teacher tool. And then the teacher tools also like the Dreambox and Lexia. I would say that we always try, and we've been trying to, we always try to streamline that for them. And a lot of times find ways to counterbalance that with something else. So younger teachers don't know a different way oftentimes, and so they're not thinking of it as an addition. That's like the only way that they know.
I'm just saying, I'm just asking a question like building on what I said. I'm over the fact that it's more work. I'm saying, are we asking them if this tool is assisting them in their teaching, the iReady, if it's assisting them? Not if it's taking them more time to do it. If it's assisting them, if they're happy with the product, are we asking them along the way?
And before you answer her question, can I just tag? So what Dr. Anderson and Dr. Devlin are presenting on in terms of learning opportunities for teachers and learning supports, we're seeing this in the context of iReady. So there's like two separate things. So the reason she's asking this question, and then a new question I have is to Dr. Anderson and Dr. Devlin, to what extent do you hold building leaders accountable to their iReady results?
Sure.
Or in terms of ongoing professional development learning within their own
Next
buildings?
slide, we'll get there.
And then are they
Yeah.
happy with that tool happy or satisfied or whatever, insert whatever word, as a resource in, does that make, so
Yeah.
that's kind of an in tandem.
And I can speak, what this for me is more about the leaders, because that's who I work most closely with. So we're talking about what we do to train our leaders. But to that point about data and Power BI, I can tell you that they, and I don't say it tongue in cheek, they really are excited to get into Power BI because it's
Tell us
such a
what Power
plated up.
BI is.
So,
It's
yeah.
the data dashboard, so it's a clickable data dashboard. I had the example of like a laptop open, and it's
That's what's
First
called
one.
Power BI.
It's the name of the tool. It's a Microsoft product. It's an industry product that's used by multiple companies today, and it's a.
Am I the only one that did not know that?
Well, that's why I'm not as good at using the individual product names. What I'm trying to say is, I hear you that you're presenting it as, look at this is great, we think this is good, and this is all the information we can access. On some level, I'm gonna be supportive of whatever you all think is best as we move forward, but I really wanna know, I want to not just watch them while they're learning and say, oh, they look happy with this. I really wanna know if and how the teachers feel that this is augmenting their ability to teach. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think that's the question I would have. I mean, and it's very clear that there is great capacity created by all of these tools. If we ask a teacher who is dealing with, I don't know, 25, 30 kids, all kinds of stuff, other things going on, are they going to be as happy about these tools as you are? I mean,
That's
this is,
what I wanna know.
I'm kind of geeking out here. I think this is awesome.
But I'm not a geek, so I wanna know if the regular people are happy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The people who are doing the
So we want a
work in
geek
the
and a
class.
non-geek answer.
So I'll take a stab at it first. So I would say the answer to your question is yes, that they are excited about it, they look forward to it, because what they do regularly is called data digs after each testing opportunity. Beginning of the year, know where their kids are starting from, and that kind of sets in motion, here's what I need to plan for, here's where the kids' strengths are, here's where there's some gaps, and I'm gonna start planning ahead going forward, and they do little formative assessments along the way. Then they get a bigger one, middle of the year, and they see again where they're at for that middle of the year already, and it helps them.
Should we ask them at some point formally?
We do ask them,
Okay.
is this helping you? And I think our response overall is, yes, this helps guide it, because that's the intent of all of this, is to help guide instruction.
Yeah, it seems like.
And
a
without
really good idea.
without us asking them, is this the useful tool, then it doesn't matter what tool we put up here, we need to be finding the right tool that's gonna be useful for them.
The other way we do that is part of Allison's team as Curriculum Development Council, which is made up of many teachers that come to the process to choose the tools in order to implement, so they get to have feedback on that process of what tools do we want to put into our classrooms.
True, but I am saying that I am interested in a broader scope of that question at some point. That's all I'm trying to say.
I would answer yes. I think that they like the tool. Yes, they use the tool, but I think they like it because it gives them information that they probably wouldn't have at their fingertips otherwise. So, and I would invite you to come along when we have some of those opportunities.
Logically and anecdotally, I
Yeah.
accept that. I'm just asking if at some point we
Let me
will.
jump in here, because I think it is a learning curve, right? Because some of our teachers were like, whoa,
Right, yeah.
wow. And then we're gonna do this too, and then we're gonna do this too. And I think we've had some learning curve to do. But I think now that in our third year, it's become more fluent. It's part of our new teacher training. And it's probably past that part, and it's probably more welcomed and used, and actually asking for a deeper dive into it to even get better reports. So I would say that every teacher's on that continuum.
Yeah.
And I'd say as a district, we're past the initial implementations.
My sense is that teachers will care to the extent, but only to the extent, that it helps them teach kids better. If it doesn't do that, they won't care. I can say with near certainty that at least some teachers I know do not care whatsoever about what we talk about in here. They care only, I know that for certain. They will care, however, about what helps them teach their kids more effectively, to move the needle in the right direction, etc. If it does that, they're going to teach. They will be supported. If it doesn't, they won't.
I think about it as surgical, because when I was teaching 20 years ago, I kind of was like, okay, scope and sequence, this is what I'm supposed to do, right? Everybody's supposed to be moving on the same path at the same time. This data allows teachers to surgically say this standard and this standard for these kids to differentiate and meet the needs. And what Allison's team has done is create links and all kinds of resources for that standard, for that grade level, so they can surgically get to it right away. And I think many years ago, we just did a summative at the end of the year, and you got it or you didn't get it. And now we're doing a lot more formative, and we're using that data to surgically diagnose where children are at and try to move them. Now that's a huge task, because it's not 30 kids, it's 30 fishing poles. Right, it's 30 fishing poles that I have to pick up and figure out where this one's at. We try to group them in small group, but I would say it's the way of the education has moved towards this personal moment for this child.
And as a parent, I can't do anything but clap and thank you. I simply am wanting to make sure that we're taking the time to ask the experts if it's serving them. And I know we have small groups we talk to, but that's not good enough for me. I would like to know more broadly. Because, you know, whereas...
And we collectively survey our staff on professional development effectiveness resources, right? So you get those survey results back that we give in the fall, versus leadership feedback, engagement, resource satisfaction. Those things are asked collectively. Now, do we say on each tool, right? Do you love this one? Do you love that one? That's really what the development council is getting individual feedback. But we ask the broad collective, is professional development meeting your needs? Is the resource that we have distributed meeting your needs? And then ask for feedback of what opportunities are there for improvement.
It's a great point, Joe, because I know where you're headed is, where is the breaking point? And we shifted some things, and are we monitoring that along the way? And I hear that, so we can provide some of that data.
I don't know.
So, my last slide, then I'm going to sit down. And I'm gonna, this has been great. Maybe not.
With the spot.
Yes, it's great. I'm enjoying it. Yes. And so to be clear, so to your point about your teacher question, what I'm talking about on this slide is just leaders. A big part of my role is to build capacity in leaders. So part of what we're doing this year is to continue to build the data culture. And I want to say, though, that, you know, in the middle schools and high schools that I work with, I've got a range of brand new principals that aren't real data savvy yet, to some that are real data savvy and know how to dig into their data, know how to use the data. So we're working together to use the strengths of the ones that know it, the ones that don't, and continue to build that data culture. So to that point, for the next couple weeks in April, we've scheduled some data talks, not real creative, but that's the best we came up with, to really get together in groups of 5 or 6 principals to look at our data in the Power BI and that tool that will pull up their data for their school, working with the AAA team. And our focus this year, we're starting really with attendance, discipline, and some of the iReady that you guys are seeing. There's a lot more data that we could look at and really dig deep, but our first start is just to look at those kind of 3 areas. And then, as I mentioned, they're going to share some of their best practices and really talk about, okay, now that we have our data, what do we do as leaders? How do we support teachers? How do we communicate this to teachers? And really continue to help our data move to where we need it to be.
Are you saying this is something new?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I'm newer than you are, so my understanding is that years ago we had some similar...
We've always had assessments.
Yeah, we've had assessments, feeder pattern, they've had some data talks feeder pattern-wise. We're not really doing that yet. We're just kind of bringing some of that conversation back, that leaders are sitting around talking about their data in groups. It has been done in the past, but not in recent years. Questions for me about?
I have nothing, Shane.
Oh my goodness.
I think you're safe.
Thank you. Great.
I'm tired for my last question.
Kathy Gross is up next, I believe.
To piggyback on your question, I can't resist the opportunity to tell you that we just closed a window for our yearly needs assessment through professional learning. And so we had 1,155 responses, and I just printed today the open-ended responses of all those, and it's my bedtime reading for the week. So I can promise you that yearly we do ask teachers what they're thinking about their needs as professionals. And we read every single word. We look for patterns, and we do that at the site and the district level. And we have a professional learning advisory who will be meeting on April 19th, who will be working really hard to find the patterns in the data and analyze how our 3-year plan worked for professional learning. And then make a new plan that we will be bringing to you in June or July for the next school year. So that, I can't honestly say that there's a question that says, do you love or use iReady? But I can honestly say that there's a question that says, how can we make your learning at your site engaging, relevant, and personal? Because we feel like what we expect for the kids, our teachers deserve as well. And we ask that at the district and the site level as an open-ended question this year.
Okay, Ann, that's fantastic, thank you. And I would like to tell you about the 2 last great books that I read. That is Better Bedtime Reading.
Okay, I'll add that to my list after I retire.
No, ma'am, I want you to do it now. Where's that librarian? She would agree with me.
Okay. So I'm here actually, though, to talk to you about SPLS, which is an acronym we created about 8 years ago. And it stands for Site Professional Learning Systems. And we felt strongly that there's a need in our district to honor the autonomy of every site, because every site in our school district has its own context and culture and needs of its students. And so we knew, though, that at the district level, there's also a need for consistency and quality assurance for every teacher in every site in the arena of professional learning. So that's why that last S is there, because we don't want just site professional learning happening, we want site professional learning systems. And we know through research what works and doesn't work in professional learning. And we also know that research proves that adult learners open the door to student success. And so we can't ignore the importance of the adult learning. So last year was our 7th year of SPLS, and we adopted a new logo with the help of our blended learning friends, and someone in their department created a logo for us, and we used that last year in our SPLS work days to create an analogy, hoping that every time a professional in Springfield Public Schools walked through a door, it would ring a memory bell with a mnemonic device that they created at their SPLS workday last year, so that every part of that door visual has meaning. And so the threshold stands for collaboration. The doorknob stands for driven. The hinges stand for the focus. Everything has a meaning. And if you go to our learning development webpage, you can see all 5 components of healthy professional learning that are listed there, and the door parts labeled. I had only 2 slides tonight, so you don't have it on a slide. But if you go to our website, you can see it, and you'll also see just under that, my words say that our Board of Education has high expectations for quality professional learning in Springfield Public Schools, and it's something that I've enjoyed my entire career, and I appreciate it, and we want it to be sustained. So thank you for that. The next thing I wanted to mention to you is that during our 8th year of SPLS workdays coming up in April and May, every school will bring 1 team to come join us. And I remember some of you a few years ago were guest speakers for that event. And what I want you to know is that we're working collaboratively with several departments. So probably one thing you've noticed from this report tonight on your agenda is that there's no shortage of things to focus on or things to do. And there's no shortage of people who want to support our schools and our students and our professionals. But it's very important that all of us are integrated and intentionally aligned so that the support feels like support instead of pressure or nuisance. And so we work hard to plan a day together with multiple department leaders to think about how might we best meet the needs of the students in Springfield Public Schools by supporting the professionals of Springfield Public Schools and reminding them of the importance of site professional learning, while consistently keeping in mind the purpose of the district consistency that's needed as well. So it's a delicate balance of autonomy and consistency, and we're working on that constantly. So this year we've decided collaboratively that when they first get there, we're going to start with the why, and we're going to talk about why does professional learning even matter. And so Simon Sinek is one of my favorite authors from a few years ago, and that definitely applies, even though he's not an educator, it applies to education, that we must always start with the why with the learning. And so we're doing that with our friends who come to us in April and May. And then, once we've analyzed the why, and that purpose will be set by Dr. Dawson and Dr. Junkman of their commitment to the learning as a learning organization, then we'll switch to the what. And I chose this graphic because there's a big pile there. And it is really tempting to think that we can do everything in the pile because it's all important. But what we encourage our site leaders and their team to do is to think about what focus should they choose. And so that's one way that we're going to bring some consistency alongside for this 8th year of SPLS. Dr. Dawson has challenged us to put it in 3 buckets this year. So as they think about choosing their what, with the help of the Power BI that Amy has mentioned earlier, and additional data from their needs assessment and many other sources of data, they'll have that at their fingertips and they'll be thinking, okay, this is what our data tells us. And Dr. Dawson is going to challenge us to think about, out of all of those needs, what might you prioritize in the arena of climate and culture? Choose one. Now choose one for academic achievement, and next choose one for, what am I forgetting, innovation. So what we know is that there needs to be alignment and focus for accomplishments to be made. If we try to do it all, we really won't accomplish what we need to accomplish. So we're going to challenge all of our sites, and it's going to be hard to just choose 3, but we're going to challenge everybody to focus on 3, and then the next thing we'll ask them to do and help facilitate their work through is how will they do it. And so April and May, these work days are only the beginning of the planning that it will take for the entire school year next year. So this is the beginning of the thought process, but we'll be providing opportunities and support throughout the way for them to be able to work the plan that they've made for the success of students. Because we know that adult learning is a key to student learning, and we also know that every student in Springfield Public Schools deserves a teacher who continues to learn to best meet the needs of their students. So that's why we do SPLS. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Happy reading.
Thank you.
I'll take the Cliff Notes version when you're ready.
Okay.
He's going to wait on the movie.
So to round out the presentation, what I wanted to end with is there are several slides to end the presentation, but I'm not planning to go through each one of them individually, but rather to tell data stories. So the way that we have this framed up at the end is to do similar schools, which is a little bit different than what we've done before. But for the mid-year report, one of the things to look at and to think about is in the middle of the year, again, we talk about that 30,000 foot, and what we have in our office is more of what's like a watch list. And so what we want to make sure of is when schools are similar in nature, whether that be by size or title, non-title, or as I mentioned before, or if they are even by feeder pattern and things of that nature, what we want to make sure of is, are they performing in a similar fashion, or are they performing as they have before, and things like we've talked about. And so one of the things that I just want to, and I'm just going to go through a few of these, and I'm just going to mention a few and things that we see and things that we point out when we talk about them. When we look at something like this, and we look at, I'm just going to use some of these as an example. Things that you see and things that I see may be a little bit different. So the slide is laid out similar to what you saw before in terms of we're looking at reading. This is non-title. This is by building. It's also in the standard view, so it has similar features as what we talked about before. Similar scale. This is, I'm going to point out first Jeffries in this particular case. And what I want to talk to you about is I have also the ability to look at this in the tiers for which the students fall in terms of interventions that might be needed. So tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So students that fall in tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3, meaning that they need additional support. So are we familiar with that language if I use that language? Okay. So at Jeffries, at the beginning of the year, 24% of the students were in tier 3. But by the middle of the year, 15% of the students were in that. But when we look at the numbers of students in that building, that moved, 111 students became 73 students, okay? And so it's just important for us to think about numbers of students that are moving through that process, and that's very exciting for us. And so when we talk about that at Disney, we're talking about Tier 3 students. It goes from 14% at Tier 3 to 7%, but that's 73 students becoming 36 students. And so it's just important when we look at that, they look kind of the same when you look at them on a slide like this, but when you dig down into the numbers of it, and those buildings are almost the same size. It's 462 versus 531. And so what we talk about when you think, oh, but they all kind of look alike. But what I wanted to make note of is that the data stories start to tell different pictures as we peel back the layers and we start to look at that. Does that make sense?
You're talking about, I'm sorry, mid-year, end of the year, what's the beginning one called?
Beginning, middle, and end.
Thank you, B. Everything's got a lingo, B. So you're talking about you're comparing beginning of the year, middle of the year, that particular school. But we are looking at middle of the year by building, middle of the year 16, 17, and 18. So there's nothing in this presentation tonight that shows us beginning of the year compared to middle of the year at any of these schools.
No, I was simply saying, let me just tell you a data story. That's all I was doing. I was just saying, let me tell you a data story.
Right, you're just taking that number of this year and diving down and saying beginning of the year to middle of the year.
And how we use data like this.
Correct. So I understand that. So, but I'm saying we don't have anything, and I'm asking this to clarify. I don't see anything that shows me beginning of the year to middle of the year, even how we're doing.
Not in this particular data set, no.
Or in this presentation.
Well, like what you just said was about it, wasn't it?
No, I just have notes to myself,
The
just
notes
to give you an
yourself were on
example.
that point.
Mhm.
They were on that point.
Yeah, these were
So notice-
comps of 3 years of
The
middle year.
examples you just gave.
Right, but, so if I'm looking at this, I can just, without even knowing what these numbers are, I can look at reading, middle of the year by building for 3 years straight, kind of the same. I mean, if I were summarizing it with technical terms, kind of the same. But I mean, I don't know, looking at this, if Jeffries this year, their middle of the year scores are better than or worse than their beginning of the year scores.
You're correct. This is really about the teaching and learning and what standards we need to be digging into. When we bring you the end of the year report, we will bring you that growth piece for Jeffries beginning, middle of the year. You'll be able to see that progress. That's not the purpose of tonight. Tonight was really about, when we look at that, can we see any outliers and can we dig down to the standard level and help do that training and help build the capacity.
You're talking about midterm corrections from a more global perspective.
Not from the growth of individual children, but really about the teaching and learning at that particular grade.
So to pick up on the technical term, but yeah, about the same.
Yep.
And I would agree. There's not dramatic difference from year to year to year, which on one level is good. So, I mean, that there's not tremendous variability. I presume that the smaller the school, the more likely the variability, because it can change dramatically from year to year to year, the smaller sample size.
However, as Mike was mentioning, we're looking at this really because this is more about the teaching and learning and the protocols are working. And so for the most part, you shouldn't see large variability. You should see it looking about the same from year to year.
So if we did see something that's a dramatic difference, that would be, to use another technique.
But I do think you're right, Charles. The sample size could create the volatility of the end of the year, because when you're talking about students, but this is talking about standards from year to year to year. Gotcha.
Right. So for that purpose, and the purpose of the slide deck, for the purpose of that they were requested to be in here, I was mentioning how we are using the slides and going through them. We're not seeing much of a change as we go through them. You're seeing a few of the bumps that you're seeing in some additional protocols and some buildings that picked up on use of some of the protocols that we had started implementing, and that would make sense. Weaver's an example of that. On this slide, Weller, Westport Elementary. Those are some examples of some things that were definitely things that we can attribute to new protocols that were implemented and that had started working. But for the most part, this type of a design is meant to be looked at as for the standards and the processes and protocols. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Any other questions on those particular slides?
I'm not sure if they're on those particular slides, but just sort of looking ahead. When we see the end of the year, and I think we've talked about this before, could we disaggregate, at least for our consumption, sort of ignite 1, 2, 3, to see what differences, if any, there might be?
Okay. Correlation to their.
Yeah, I mean, just disaggregate them so we can sort of, is there any difference? It may or may not be attributable to each other.
Maybe even put that filter on, it may not be enough time, or, you know, but we can put that filter on.
It may be a null difference, but.
Mm-hmm. On the horizon, we have the assessments that are coming. So thanks to you, we will be offering Right Test, Right Time for the junior class. So we have about 1,800 students that will be taking the ACT on April the 5th. The map window opens up for April 23rd to May 11th. We'll have the EOC window coming. We have the iReady end of year. We'll have the advanced placement window opening up, so it is the season. We'll have somewhere in the neighborhood of about, I don't know, 100,000 test sessions happening in this district coming up. So that's what's going on in the next several weeks in the district, and we're very excited about that. And we'll be back at the end. The last window closes with the end of the school year, so we'll be back in June with the end of the year report. And any additional thoughts that you have like that, just let me know, and we'll get those plated up for you. So turn it over to you. Any other additional questions?
Okay, so it's so much, but I do feel like I want to understand. So if I'm a parent or a patron in the community, and looking at, let's say, the last, I'm going to go back to the non-titled.
Okay.
Or my title building. Looking at the title building subgroup, students by building. So I'm looking at, there's a few of our Title I buildings that are a little bit above the other buildings. Whenever we're talking about the standard view, we've got a few that are bumped up there.
Mm-hmm.
So as a patron or a parent or just an interested individual, principal, teacher, we've got a couple of schools that are bumped up. So what is that telling me? That school doing a little better? Their students are middle of the year, hitting the standards a little bit higher?
Weaver's a good example of that. That's
Weaver's
what.
what I'm looking at.
Right. So we can attribute that to, like I was mentioning, protocols, and that we know that that building is implementing some things that are definitely taking off. We're seeing some movement in that building.
You can see Portland, and I'm not pointing out any specific schools. I just think that this would be in York. We know they've been doing some wonderful things, but some of these buildings, I would think that this would be. And I guess my history with the school district as I-1 director, and knowing and loving these schools and spending a great deal of time in these buildings, I think there's much to celebrate here, at least middle But to see where they are in the middle of the year, the teachers have presented halfway through the standards, halfway through the year the standards. And so where there's still lots to learn, we're seeing some pretty good work at some of those. Am I seeing that correctly?
You are seeing that correctly, yes. And I just know, and so what that tells me, and then as I was mentioning a moment ago, so when I see that and then I dig a little deeper and look at the further layers, what I know is that they are moving kids through those intervention tiers. And I know that at Weaver, that they are doing some amazing things, and that the students are moving out of the tier 3 and tier 2, and they are going into tier 1. That is the right work that's happening.
That's huge work.
It is amazing work.
To move students through we call it pyramid of intervention.
Yes, and it's still, yes.
Same thing.
Same.
Lisa, I would say it's probably a combination of a lot of things, right? It's one of the data protocols, so they know what standards to work on. We also have a dynamic principal there, who Jay has invested a tremendous amount of time building capacity through leadership. You also have Kathy Gross and that team coming together, building a real site plan to build the capacity of teachers. So you have a combination of things happening to make that. It's just not one point. So you got to give them credit that they're kind of firing all cylinders right now, using the right recipe.
Well, and I know that sometimes we have a discussion that if it's working here, then let's go
replicate
it here. However, it doesn't always fit what's working in one building and the culture and the teachers and what's going in that building, doesn't always work in another building. However, when you have some similar buildings, so if you've got some similarities in our buildings, which we do have a lot of similarities in some of our Tier 1 buildings, that would be something to look at.
Well, and Jill has spent a tremendous amount of time at Westport Elementary and Westport Middle School, and Weller is picked up on some of those components too. And so Weller is spending a lot of time pairing up with Westport because they too have similar population, and they're replicating success in that too. And so a lot of time, yes.
That's about the collaboration between two leaders saying,
yeah,
let's share.
Amazing things are happening. I just encourage you to stay tuned for great results.
But at the same time, those are 3 different groups of students over the course of 3 years. So that's like comparing blueberries to oranges to broccoli. I mean, those, I think those colors.
3 different students, but the exact same standards.
Yeah, it's the right, it's the same standards, but the students we all know start at different levels.
Right, but again,
they're not completely different students because one grade level left, the others are still there. They're moving through
Because
that.
we're looking at it by building.
We're looking at it as a
We're
building.
not looking at this by
so
grade. Okay. If we were looking at this by grade.
5 of the 6 would be consistent. 5 of the 6 grade levels would be consistent over the previous year.
I was thinking if we were looking at this by grade, but if we're looking at this by building, they're relatively the same over a 3-year period. But if you're looking at it by grade,
then you're looking at it differently.
Then those are blueberries to oranges.
but again, and we're checking process and protocol. And so
I feel like there's a disconnect tonight between standard view and student achievement. Do you feel that? Because if you're not feeling that, then I'll just leave that.
Because we use the standard to get to student achievement.
Yes, I know, but I'm just feeling a disconnect, but I don't.
it may just be because it's middle of year, it's a little bit different. But it's the preferred method for iReady. I mean, we're following their protocol. But middle of year is a little bit different. It feels a lot different when you're at the end of the year. It just feels very exciting, I guess. Where middle of year, it's a mid-year check, and so it just feels a little bit bumpier. And this is the first time we're seeing this kind of data. So this one does feel a little bit wonkier, but it was a first run at looking at something like this, and us sharing a little bit more than what we have before, and so, yeah. But I appreciate your feedback. So, if that is all, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Dawson.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Yes, thank you.
He's been sitting for a long time, so. Just moving on, item 8, board policy. We have no policies for review tonight. I know there's some in the works, but none for us to approve tonight. We also have no new business. It's good. Unfinished business, does anybody need to take a break for 5 minutes? I mean, stand-up break. Stand up and walk in the back for a minute?
Yes, please.
Okay. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
I can't go see her right now, but I want to call. She was doing better earlier today, so hopefully you can say something. Yes.
Okay, moving on, item 10.01, property, automobile, and liability insurance renewal. That was presented at a study session. Any other questions anybody had for that? If not, okay. With that, I would approve that the board, I would ask for a motion to approve the property, automobile, and liability insurance renewal with the current carriers. Second. Motion by Charles, second by Tim. Good vote. Motion carried, thank you. 10.02, budget development. Carol.
Okay.
This evening, during our high-level budget review that we started just a meeting or so ago, we will cover the Greater Ozark Center for Advanced Professional Studies Fund and also the Health Benefit Trust Fund. This reminds you of the separate funds and the two fiduciary funds that are under the umbrella of the Springfield School District. And this shows you our budget timeline. This is GoCaps and Health Benefit. On April 3rd, we'll cover the Capital Projects Fund. The fiduciary funds are held in a custodial capacity. The resources do not belong to the district, but we do manage them on a daily basis. They are audited as part of our regular financial audits, and they're not part of that State of Missouri report that you receive each fall that represents the comprehensive fiscal year from the year prior. The GoCaps Fund discussion objectives this evening will cover the governance and support, the participation by districts, tuition rate, the course offerings, and the budget. A reminder that this was formed by the Board of Education as a program initiation, August 2015. It is managed, however, by a GoCaps Board of Directors, and that's representative of participating school districts and business leaders, and that would be superintendents and those business leaders. There is tremendous support. We've talked about this, again, as a financial report on GoCaps, and you've received other reports through the Innovation Information reporting structure on choice, and you've learned more about GoCaps, but just to be reminded that we have a number of partners in our community and beyond that are supporting GoCaps and helping kids learn in a different way that speaks to them. So we also have a Strand Advisory Committee that covers representation for the program, and then summer externships are provided for teachers who aren't teaching in GoCaps but who get exposed to the program through those externships. The revenue in the current year is $615,400, and that is primarily tuition. There is a small amount of revenue relative to interest income. Last year, that was $23,700 approximately of interest income. Expenditures are comprised of tuition billed out to all the participating districts, and Springfield is a participating district. This slide shows the membership. There are 11 member districts, 3 associate districts, and 3 affiliate districts. And some of those have slightly changed, but again, we have great participation, and it is truly a collaborative effort throughout our region to provide this learning opportunity for students. The GoCaps Fund revenue source, we're showing that we have 277 available seats per semester for the current fiscal year. The tuition is $1,100 per semester, per seat, and it's paid by those sending districts. We have affiliate membership that is $1,000 per semester, and that is what generates that $615,400. Yes?
So when you talk about the associate, what exactly?
Right.
So those are districts that don't come to all strands at Springfield. So Branson has a medical strand. Hollister and Reed Springs send their medical students as well as Branson to their medical classroom. The 11 member districts are all core members of all the classrooms in Springfield. So associate, Branson also sends to other Springfield classrooms, but they also send to that Branson Hub classroom. So that is a classification for just those that send to a hub.
So they kind of consider that their own GoCaps.
You got it. And then affiliate is completely not under our fiscal agent. They are just getting PD from us and partnerships for curriculum and those kind of things. So they completely run their strands on their own.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you. Okay. So moving forward, this shows you the strands that are currently offered, and that includes 2 strands for medical and healthcare in Springfield, half of a strand in Branson for medical and healthcare. We also have that engineering and manufacturing strand, entrepreneurship, and technology solutions. And an exciting thing for this next year would be the addition of a part-time teacher education strand that would be supporting education efforts for our students. So that is planned for the FY19 fiscal year. The salary and benefits of this particular program represents just over 70% in the current year budget. Purchase services, 21.71%. Supplies, just under 5%. And administrative services, 3.38%. That administrative services fee is based on 3.5% of the total expenditures. It's assessed at the very end of the year. I will tell you that last year, that assessment fee, the administrative fee, was nearly $21,000, and so that reimburses us for our time, and it certainly covers our investment in managing this program. Again, the total expenditures, $597,877. And that concludes the information on the Go CAPS program from a budgetary perspective. Next, we'll talk about Health Benefit Trust Fund. Discussion objectives are, this is basically our self-insurance fund and how we manage the money relative to that. I'll cover for you stop-loss insurance, the fund sources, the cash flow, and then the district health contributions. The self-insurance provides for us reduced fixed costs. So overall, then that reduces the costs back into the system. And we do have flexibility as allowed by law to design our plan, and we do comply with those laws. The stop-loss insurance coverage, I've indicated for you here, it's $300,000 specific individual plus a $225,000 aggregating specific, and you may be wondering what that is. Basically, any catastrophic occurrences that may take place for any of our covered individuals, we are covered by this additional layer of insurance. So this slide provides you some context for that. So if we had 3 claimants, and again, they could be employees or they could be dependents of our employees, and they had catastrophic claims, then those would be cumulative, reaching that, in this scenario, that $600,000 threshold. So it overall reduces the out-of-pocket of the district. So you can see the amount applied to the aggregating specific fund, $100,000 from the first claimant, $125,000 from the second claimant, and then we were finished at that point and no additional funds were required. So I will tell you that the stop-loss insurance does cost us about $1.3 million. And the good news about all of this is that it's managed by insurance companies and by our brokers. So we don't have to be experts in the area, but we have that additional layer of protection. Yes?
Any idea what kind of claims they've paid out on that?
That's a great question. I don't have the answer to that. That's a great question. What I will say, and I was going to mention it later on, we don't have specific information about employee names or anything like that.
Right.
But we are provided information during our review with our provider and with our broker, with some base information of high claims that have occurred, so that we can have a fiscal review of that and the impact to the fund.
I guess you never really are truly self-insured. You
No.
always have to have this to cover the top end.
It would be irresponsible to not carry stop-loss insurance, even though it seems very high to carry it. So, because you could easily have a medical claim situation that well exceeds $1 million, and you're well on your way to having that paid for. So I know it's complicated, but yet it's simple from our perspective. I'll mention to you, we have partners in this self-insurance process. So MedPay is the company that processes all claims. So no employee in the Springfield School District is seeing any claims submitted by any employee or dependent of our employees. Same for our Delta dental coverage. We have a third-party administrator who processes those claims. And then MedTrack is our pharmacy benefit administrator. Our overall support is provided by J.W. Terrell, our broker, and we entered into the second of 3 years, July 1, on our agreement with them. They provide outstanding service for us, and they manage when we do go to market to seek bids on new renewals or new agreements with providers. The employee premiums at this point in time are 100% district funded, so 100% employer funded. Medical premiums are $460 per month per qualifying employee, and dental premiums are $1,065 per month per qualifying employee. That annual spend is $5,647.80, And we do also provide, of course, the required coverage for retirees and COBRA, and then also any dependent care relationships that employees might be interested in. And additional funds, I mentioned before, was the interest income. COBRA is the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. Most of us always just call it COBRA, but it's that opportunity for a person to extend their coverage when they separate employment from the employer. This is our current census data. It shows you that we have 3,408 active employees and also 444 retiree subscribers, and at the time of this data pull, 6 COBRA elections. We are covering, through this self-insurance plan, 5,973 lives, and that includes the dependents added to that. The annual expenditure for the district for the health insurance coverage is $19,247,702 in the current year. That's approximately 7.26% of our current operating budget. And that, coupled with the contributions that our employees make for their dependents, then causes the full amount of nearly $28 million to go into this fund and then be paid out. With regard to the reserve balance recommendation, there's no specific legal requirement. There is a general rule of thumb, and we follow it, and that is we want to ensure that we have 2 months of claims and 3 months of administrative costs. The estimated required balance at this time, or the recommended balance, is $4.9 million, and that's based on current data. This slide shows you the cumulative total based on the estimated costs. If they would play out through the end of the year, we would expend $28.1 million. You can see that our current year budget is $27,350,000. So we may be bringing you a budget amendment increase on expenditures later on in the year. We'll continue to watch it and monitor whether that will need to happen. This information reflects the revenue and expenditures, and this is comprehensive of FY17. And you can see that the red line or orange line is the revenue, and we have a spike of revenue that occurs in the month of June. And this is all part of you understanding how the ebb and flow works on cash flow and our budgeting process. We have balance of contract checks that are issued for our teaching staff. And so the June, July, and August checks all post in the month of June, and that's why we see the spike of the contributions from those employee deductions or employer-paid benefits going into the account. And you can see that with regard to expenditures, you might not be surprised that expenditures might spike around the December area, because when people are off at spring break or at Christmas time or during the summertime, that's when they seek their medical routine care. This shows you the current year and that same trajectory. So now we're looking at it from the July side. It's not surprising then that revenue is very low in the month of July and August. And then it spikes again in September when that first payroll occurs, where all of our employees are back on the payroll for that month. In addition to the costs that we've covered, the other costs covered through this trust account is relative to the salary benefits for the wellness coordinator in our district. So I shared with you that the general rule of thumb is to maintain the average of 2 months of claims and 3 months of administrative costs, and right now that's coming in at just under $5 million. Currently we have an average balance of just over $6 million, so we have a very stable fund balance. And at this time we do not anticipate an increase in premiums, and will likely recommend that the premiums continue to be 100% employer paid. This slide shows you the fund balance trends, and again you can see that over the years we struggled a bit we were on a downhill trend from 2011 down to 12 and then 13, and we did invest funds in the Health Benefit Trust Fund in 2014 and 15, and now with our new discounts that we received through our current contract, we are on the uphill trend as of 2017, and we've now leveled off. So great news on the front for Health Benefit Trust Fund. This is showing you that same information on a month-to-month fund balance trajectory for our current fiscal year as compared to last year. So, any questions about Health Benefit Trust Fund or Go Caps?
Questions? Thanks, Carol.
All right. And next month, April 3rd, well, yeah, it'll be next month, we'll cover that Capital Projects Fund.
Okay, moving on to 10.02, we'll stay up there.
I will.
And that is the Doling Purchase Agreement.
Yes. So, as is your practice, while we discuss real estate items in closed session, we understand that it is your desire that you vote in public and that you receive the information in public. So, this evening we're providing to you the offer for the Doling property, and I'd like to share just a few facts with you first. So, the Doling property was appraised June 28th, 2017 for $425,000. The Board of Education voted to surplus that property July 18th, 2017. And we also then engaged in, you will recall, that request for information process. We did that at the same time as Pepperdine. And the Pepperdine, that concluded in October 16th, 2017 was the deadline for proposals. And we did receive a viable option for Pepperdine, and that is still in process, and we expect that to close in the coming weeks. The Doling property, however, did not have a viable option. It still remained listed with Sperry Van Ness, our realtor, and was still being shown. And the district was approached through our realtor with an offer that it would be utilized for senior housing, and we provided you that information during the last closed session. And I'd like to just read a bit about the redevelopment plan. I will say this, that one of the things that I asked of the realtor is that while we weren't in an official RFI process, request for information process, that the interested party provide the same basic information so that you could evaluate that and determine feasibility for investing back into the community. The redevelopment plan for Doling, located at 1423 West Atlantic, is for senior housing. The proposed redevelopment would include 40 to 50 units on the site, which is indicated at just over 2.5 acres, of which about 80% would be one-bed units, 20% two-bed units, and another 3,000 square foot for common area. The current redevelopment assumptions would utilize the existing three-story structure with addition of an elevator for 28,000 square foot of existing area. The information that I've been provided indicates that this developer would seek low-income housing tax credits through the Missouri Housing Development Commission. However, the developer is also committed to investing in excess of $7 million into the property, which certainly will provide a great investment into that community. So the offer is for the full appraised value at $425,000, and I would like to read the motion to you, if that would be fine with you. That the board authorize and approve the sale of the Doling property, 1423 West Atlantic Street, Springfield, Missouri, to Bywater Development Group, LLC, for a price of $425,000 on the terms as set forth in the commercial option agreement and the Exhibit A notification to seller, and the president or vice president of the board is authorized to execute the agreement and notification on behalf of the Board of Education and the district, and to take all actions required to complete and close this transaction. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Carol? If not, I would entertain a motion of what she said. So I don't have to read it. Got a motion by Jill, second by Denise. So we would vote. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, item 11.01, public comments for non-agenda items. I'd like to read, the Board of Education will allow comments on topics not related to the printed agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes for each speaker and will be timed. You'll see the timer up on the screen. It's inappropriate to address the board about individual students or individual staff members by name in an open meeting. If you have concerns about individuals, these concerns should be addressed to the appropriate administrative supervisors, either in the schools or in the district office. The board uses this time in our meeting to listen to comments or concerns from the public, but will not comment or engage with the speakers during the meeting. We have 5 speakers tonight, so I'll get this started. First one is Roy Holen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Jungman, and members. Having been a former legislator, I will mercifully give you my 90-second summary. And you have a statement on your desk if you'd like to look at it at a more refreshed time. At any rate, a lot of things are going on in the background, great things going on here at school. I commend you for your service. And we were scheduled for a vote tonight on preschools and a closed school closure. And I guess that is not on the agenda, but it's still of concern to us. There's money available for preschools, and that provides some incentive. At the same time, how much education do 4-year-olds need, or how much can they take in a day? And so that's a question. 1 out of 4, I think, as you know and agree, that one of these preschoolers will not be prepared for kindergarten. So that's a small group of all the 4-year-olds who actually would benefit from a program like this for that 1 golden hour. The current proposal is a mixture of all sorts of things. They sound awfully expensive, may not be necessary, and especially if they're attached to a proposal to close the district's most successful elementary schools simply and merely to provide building space for this 1 hour of preparation. I think we can do better. First of all, no school closures. This will relieve us all and is unnecessary and I think very destructive in many ways. Second, use the state money very efficiently, effectively. We heard how important that relational learning is, and moms are still the best teachers. Number 3, we're familiar with parents as teachers. Let's use that for a new model. Learn at home in place, secure, without the disruptions of travel and all this overhead. And we can still get an hour of education for less money. So let's take school to the kids. Let's not force our kids to a school. And I urge you'll consider this invitation, this alternative. I hope we can get to agreement on a new vision for these preschoolers. We all live in Springfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holt. Next speaker, Pat Scott.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I have to excuse my voice. A number of things concern me about the school system. I'll address some of the things on the small community schools a little bit later. I have to ask this board, do you really want to follow the superintendent's and the current administration's desire to promote alternative seating, open classrooms to the detriment of student learning and safety? There is no proof that these concepts promote learning, and some of the lowest test scores in the state exist in Springfield. I heard the presentation earlier from your statistics people, but you seem to shy away from comparing yourselves to districts around Springfield. And Roy Holden has mentioned before about the donut hole effect. All the districts around Springfield pretty much have higher test scores. We're number 72 in the state. It's not something to be proud of. Now, with regard to the neighborhood schools, I hope that the board looks at the results of Campbell and York and others. And as Roy stated earlier, there's no need to close these schools. They're high-performing schools. We already have early childhood in these schools. All we need to do is increase it if we need to. And to end up with a building like Campbell in a couple of years, if you try to close it, then it'll be on the block to sell because it's not suitable for preschool, not a 2-story building. They can make that suitable with adding additional people. We have already in this city spent millions of dollars on air conditioning, bringing the buildings up to par for the electronics and the digital age, and I don't know of one that doesn't need anything except regular maintenance. Please stop these reckless plans. There is no proof that Ignite promotes the best instruction or test results for K through 8. In fact, you see the same studies I do. There's a lot of information out there that kindergartners and kids should not have these devices in their hands all the time. Explore, I don't know if you have the statistics. Is Ignite working? I think you should ask, is it working? Explore, it's a recess program for the summer. It especially concerns me for the Title I schools. We have no remedial programs that help in math or reading. And one of the things that concerns me, I've got the newspaper clipping from last week. This district has a culture of intimidation. Mrs. Patterson, Dr. Taylor, I really appreciate your questions with regard, I'm not going to be able to finish my results or my comments about what these statistics do to teachers. We have lost hundreds of hours of teaching experience because teachers leave the district. They're either told, leave, get on board, or leave and go down the road. I was hoping I could read, you heard the comments a couple of weeks ago. But it was amazing to me, and I think you both and the rest of you have a grasp on what's going on. We had 15 people in this room preparing these statistics, and not a one of them is necessary to teach kids out there in our schools. So I hope we can, thank you for your service. I know that you're trying to do the right thing. I have hundreds of petitions. We have other people with petitions. I don't know what you're going to do about the Campbell School. I hope it's not a sneak in the back door to close it. I guess my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patty. Next speaker, Ralph Plank.
Hello, how are y'all? Appreciate being here. My name is Ralph Plank. I was on the board from 1998 to 2004. I know many of you, and I appreciate your service. I can relate. And I wanted to say that I went to Boyd, Pipkin, Central, and Drury, and I live in that neighborhood now. I live in the Midtown Historic District, just 3 doors down from Boyd. We need to preserve our neighborhood schools. These schools are the fabric of our community. The heart of a neighborhood is the elementary neighborhood school. Neighborhoods bring people together, provide fellowship and resources, give identity, and are a source of pride and safe haven for children and adults. Strong neighborhoods make strong communities. The overwhelming research shows that small schools improve academic achievement, attendance, and attitudes, while lowering dropouts and negative social behaviors, including violence and gang involvement. School districts who have tracked costs of school closures and consolidations have found that a vast majority did not save any money at all, or consolidation actually costs more. These neighborhood schools are anchors for their communities, especially in impoverished neighborhoods. And neighborhoods do not want abandoned school buildings there either. Impoverished kids have higher academic achievement in smaller schools. Generally, the larger the school, the lower the achievement. Just look at Westport, our largest high-poverty elementary school, which has consistently had some of the lowest achievement in the district for over 20 years. Last year, Campbell kids generally had higher achievement than the McGregor kids. Last year, Campbell kids generally had higher achievement than McGregor kids. And York, as we saw tonight, had the highest test scores of our impoverished schools. My understanding is that Campbell has made big improvements over the last year. Is it best for kids to close the higher performing impoverished schools and move the kids to lower achieving schools? That's basically what this plan is. The idea has been floated to close Campbell, Bowerman, and York and use the buildings for the new preschool program. Rather than doing that, why not add the new preschool program to existing neighborhood schools, like is done with Wonder Years and early childhood special education? The Catholic schools in Springfield do this. It seems like a common sense, down-to-earth idea. Instead of closing Campbell, Bowerman, and York, why not add the new preschool program there next year to build capacity? Then add the additional students in future years to other neighborhood schools in areas where they're needed, as you've done with the Wonder Years and Early Childhood Special Education. Try to add the new preschool classes where there is extra space and in neighborhoods where the students live. This would save on busing and future construction costs, put the preschools closer to the students, and help anchor the neighborhood schools with the families in the neighborhoods. Rather than closing Campbell, Bowerman, and York, let's keep them open as the heart and anchor of their neighborhoods. Neighborhood schools are one tool to help build character and better citizens for the future. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Plank? Next speaker, make sure I get this right. Kathy Garcia? Is that right? Okay. Okay. Maggie Kyra? K-A-I-R-A? Okay. Okay, that's the 5. Okay. Moving on to cabinet reports.
There we go. Turn it over to Stephen.
I would just take a moment to recap some of the recent stories shared in the public. There are many great things that are happening. We had a number of SPS retirees who've had many years of dedicated service to this district, and our students who've been featured in the media. Chris Parker, the principal at Harrison Elementary, as well as David Martin at Sunshine Elementary, and then Coach Gary Gray from Cherokee Middle School. All 3 of them received profiles in the News Leader as well as the Ozark Sports Zone. We were pleased that Color 10 covered our Taste of Missouri efforts at Sherwood Elementary. Students developed the menu and cooked the food and included that as part of their project-based learning, and that was covered by Color 10. Central's 125th birthday celebrated by students and staff with a historical overview of the school and the impact it's had on the community. That was covered by Color 10. Kickapoo basketball, they're great advance to state, and there was a fantastic feature on Jordan Worsinger, one of the athletes that was injured and just had a remarkable comeback and showed a lot of stamina. It was very inspiring, and the News Leader did a feature on that. And then finally, Miss Missouri visited our students at Hickory Hills Middle School, and Color 10, as well as a number of other broadcast outlets covered that in her message of inspiration to the students. And then coming up this week, we'll have the News Leader, Color 10. We'll be doing a feature at Harrison Elementary covering their broadcast journalism program for 4th graders. It's an amazing program. Their students write, produce, edit, and report the news. And they're doing great things there. And so that will be featured later this week. And then finally, Color 10 will be doing a feature on the Imagine SPS High Impact Grants that were awarded just this past week by surprise to some of our schools in the area, 5 of those. So look for that to be coming this week. SPS.org, the rollout continues. More and more great profiles are being featured on our website, which is a great community resource. Encourage the public to continue checking updates there. And we are continuing to reach out to the district and encouraging buildings to share story opportunities for us to share with the media, also to feature on SPS.org. We're beginning a new email story at spsmail.org for people to pitch those stories to us. And we're continuing to cultivate those proactively. So those are my updates.
Very quickly, March 1st, we hosted a Teach SPS event. We had over 60 potential teaching candidates participate in that event, and some 20 to 30 of our own staff present to engage with those candidates. We held that downtown. The response has been very, very positive from those candidates. We're really excited. It's the 3rd year for that program, an informal atmosphere, just meet and greet, get to know a little bit about us and about what we have to offer. And we were excited to hear that most of those candidates had applied, and those who hadn't, most of the remaining were going to be applying for us in the coming weeks. So we were excited to offer that opportunity to get to know the district a little better. Next week we will be participating with the SPS Connect Leadership Cadre in evaluating some of their capstone projects, and so that cadre is a group of individuals who are interested in leadership positions, whether in our district or in other districts, but it's kind of a grow into leadership program that the district offers. They've participated for over an 18-month period in that program, and the culmination of that is a capstone project where they have identified a problem in their building, and then they come forward with some solutions, and then they're going to pitch their ideas to a number of leaders next week, and so it's kind of the culmination of that program as they move into the next stages of their career and look for leadership opportunities. And the last thing I'll mention is our early notice of retirement or resignation. Deadline was today, and this month in March we received 15 additional, so we have a total of 96 individuals who've participated in that early notification process this year. 94 of those are building or administrators or teachers, 2 were district level administrators. And just as a comparison point, last year we had 76, and the year prior, the first year, we had 96 as well. And so we're right there where we've been in years past, and our goal then is to hire early so that we have an opportunity to attract that best talent into the district. So lots of good things. We're in the midst of hiring season, and that will continue over the next several months, but great interest in our district. A hugely talented pool of teachers out there that we're drawing from, and we're just real excited that they're interested in coming to our district and being part of the great work that's going on.
So just want to give you a quick update on Explore. We've opened up registration, and we're already a little over 7,000 students, which is up about 160 from where we were at this time last year. The metric that's always in my forefront is how we're doing with pre-kindergarten kids, and we have about 303. It's a little bit down, but we've also changed kindergarten enrollment and tried not to sync them up. So we've done that separately, but I expect that number to get to closer to 1,000. And then, as you've heard in previous reports, online is still very robust, and we have over 3,700 seats filled for that, and that's way up almost over 1,000 from this time last year. And thanks to HR, we have 950 teachers have been placed, and with only about, I think, 20 of them as outside teachers. So they're almost all SPS employees. So that's a great celebration for enrichment. It's a great celebration for intervention, and it's standards aligned with curriculum. The other piece, I would just know some of you will be attending next week. We will be celebrating our scholars at our 5 high schools in the Rose Banquet. Opportunity to thank their teachers and thank their parents, and to recognize their outstanding achievement. And we thank Missouri State for hosting us for that. I also want to give a shout out for the Parkview boys and the Kickapoo girls for their great run. That just really makes our community so proud of what we're doing every day. As you saw, fourth quarter assessment, I always say hold on to your hats because we're gearing up for all the assessments that are coming in April, and we're going to have a lot to celebrate. I feel pretty confident. And then lastly, I just want to thank Alina for going on the Nashville study visit. I think it was a really good opportunity to see that district and how they've kind of done the academy model, and then where we're at in our small little step. But I appreciate you coming along.
When is kindergarten registration?
We just did from the 1st through the 8th.
Is that district-wide?
Yep, and then once we get them registered, then we get them. We go back and get them for Explore.
Okay.
So last year we did Explore first, and then we kind of lacked on the registration. So this time we did registration.
So then you know a bigger pool.
Bigger pool, and then we can connect them to Explore as a kind of bonus. So
right.
We just reversed it for better
You might
efficiency.
get a lot more.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Okay.
Rachel Rosenberry's role.
I'm guaranteed.
Hot and spicy, or what class?
I think it is hot and spicy.
Pretty
As a matter of fact.
Pretty popular.
Yeah.
Well, as you well know, you'll continue to see me at the podium providing those high-level budget presentations, but just know behind the scenes, the finance team continues to work collaboratively with leaders, and that includes an evaluation process by our executive leadership team regarding to budget priorities as we move toward that June goal. Also, Penny Rector and I are collaborating with our representatives from collective bargaining units, and we
legislative real quick, if that's okay. Just a couple things. They're on recess this week, so you're not getting quite as many updates or requests to engage, but that will kick back up next week as we expect House Bill 2247 to hit the floor next week. So I appreciate those who engaged last week, as that's really building some momentum, but we expect that this week of recess is a lot of work, doing groundwork to get it moved, so we'll have to be prepared to help stop that. So be ready to engage next week as that moves forward. Also, I would say the House budget bills, really important to know that they came out. It was very positive for public education at this point. Representative Fitzpatrick has full funding of the formula, which is a great thing at this point. It's a question of whether or not the Senate will pass that and what the governor will sign, but that's a great positive move. Also did some good work to lessen the cut to higher education also, which is important to our community and our students that leave us as they think about their next step. So those are kind of the big things. Also in that budget bill, I would note that transportation remained cut to the withholding level, maybe just a hair above that. So we will see, likely realize that as a permanent cut this coming year, unless the Senate would put that back in. And also MPP, which is Missouri Preschool Project, which we have one of those classrooms currently, was unfunded by the House, but those monies are what helped make the full funding of the formula possible. So it's really a shift in order to help get that full funding up. So that's overall, I think, a good thing. So that's it on legislative.
Well, the only other one there's one running through, and I can't think of the number right now, but I had it for changing the election.
Oh, yeah, I saw
the board election to November and making them 4-year terms. It's got a little more traction than I thought it was going to get, but I don't know if it can make it to the finish line. But
What's fresh now?
Politics.
It just played out in Kansas.
Politicize the school board election. It's kind of being put under, well, more people vote in November, but it's basically several states have done that, and it got to the point of basically declaring what party you're in as a school board member. So it's very much politicizing that, and I mean, that's one downside. The other one is it just gets lost. School election will get lost in the shuffle during November. If you have a presidential election, no one's talking about school boards or school elections. Lucky it's just board elections, not bond issues or anything like that. It's strictly elections. So we're working hard to make sure that doesn't see the light of day, but it's got a lot more traction than I thought it would. For what? Rayburn.
Kansas City region.
Yeah, Kansas City. Well, it's also, strong charter school. She's the one that's got the charter bill.
Yeah, it's 2247.
2247. She's the same one that's got the charter bill. So
kind of follows
we'll
the
see.
path of Kansas. Kansas just moved their term or their board elections to November and 4-year terms also. So they're in the middle of that transition.
So stay tuned.
Yep. Be ready to engage.
They haven't got a lot accomplished so far. I think they've passed 2 bills.
I would say the good news is the visiting scholar bill did pass. It passed both the House and the Senate, which has been a combined effort of regional chambers as well as school districts and CAPS programs that allows for a small window for professionals with advanced degrees or experience in their manufacturing or business to go teach in classrooms like Go CAPS. It's a 1-year renewable up to a total of 3 years certification for those people that might fit the need at times that are hard to find in those areas. So that's a really positive bill that did pass. And I'm just waiting the governor's signature, I think, at this point. So.
So would not be required to go through teaching college?
No, it's a request that we submit to the department and would need to be approved by the state board. So we're going to need a state board at some time in order for that to happen.
At some point.
But let's get the bill passed and then we'll worry about that next. So.
Okay, moving on, board comments. Any comments from other board members? Quiet. Upcoming meetings?
Just stuff on the calendar, I think. Nothing beyond that.
Any good meetings?
We've got several events, the foundation event that honors Teacher of the Year is coming up. Make sure that you've applied, and we also have a United Way banquet that we're partner and support them in significant ways. I think you got an invite to that if anybody's interested. Rose Banquet, obviously, so like just mentioned, and school board meeting back here on the 3rd. Yeah, so it's the study session for April 3rd.
Okay. Plus deltas, be sure and put any plus deltas, comments about the meeting up on the board. We do need to vote to go into executive session, and I would entertain a motion to board meeting executive session to discuss legal, real estate, and personnel matters as provided in section 610-021, 1, 2, 3, and 13 RSMO. Moved by Alina, second by Charles. That's a last